Hi, good afternoon. My name is Asfar Aziz, but you can engage digitally. I'm currently pursuing MSc Entrepreneurship, Innovation and Technology at Strathclyde Business School in Glasgow under the Hunter Centre for Entrepreneurship. And I'm a marketing technologist and also a digital innovation consultant. So without further ado, let's start my presentation. So today, the topic of my presentation and my talk is leadership in the digital age, reality versus perception, how trust is the new currency in the era of fake news and misinformation. And I thank everyone for joining me today, and let's have an engaging discussion about this relevant topic. And I hope it adds a lot of value to whatever that we are doing today. So the outline of my presentation is basically, I will start with defining what fake news and misinformation the digital age is. And we look at, start with why should we care? And we look into the trust issues, and we will redefine the leadership in the digital age. And I will end it with some key takeaways and recommendations for everybody. Fake news. Flavor of today. In today's COVID-19 situation, there's even a new term called infodemic. So it's really relevant today. But first, let's define this. Simon Yates from University of Liverpool, in his article, The Conversation, defined fake news as information distributed by a certain medium, often to the benefit of specific social actors. And there's two key characteristics that we have to look into, which is the news is proven unverifiable and is materially incorrect. So ages ago, fake news is actually used to be called propaganda. And in fact, propaganda is still being used in today's political movement, except that it's being fought in the digital channels. So why is it really relevant? If you look in the US, it's a major problem just behind healthcare costs and illegal drug use. So the population in the US feels that fake news and misinformation and disinformation is actually a major problem. And the responsible parties are people like fake social media accounts and politicians especially, and governments. But if we look at the historical timeline of propaganda and fake news, it's been there since ages, since 63 BC during the Roman Emperor Augustus Octavian. And throughout history, you can see influential people using propaganda, using the means of fake news to actually discredit their opponents and stuff. But the term itself is being popularized by none other Donald Trump during the 2016 USA general election, where the term is being used freely in his Twitter account, especially that started the post-truth era and post-truth description or definition. So Claire Waldell from First Draft have categorized 7 types of fake news, and these are the some of the types: satire, or parody, false connection, and a lot of it come from content manipulation and different types of content. Let's take a look at some of the examples. This is 2 images. One is satire or parody, where there's no intention to cause harm. There's a lot of sites that does this, Daily Mash, The Onion, or even 9gag, for example. And another sample is this tweet actually comes from Trump again during the 2016 general election to discredit Hillary Clinton. But the source of it, if you look at the source, is abcnews.com.co, which is a fake source. It's an imposter content. So this is another sample of example of fake news where people can't verify that information properly. So what are some key driving this trend, key drivers? First, we've mentioned this, which is the rise of social media channels, and because of its usage, fake news spread like wildfire. And we are in the post-truth politics and populist movement, political figures using misinformation to gain more popularity. And we look at ourselves, we are drawn to rumors and sensationalism. We love celebrity news and gossip and rumors. So it also drives this trend. And so also through our own social biasness and psychology of persuasion, that makes company and organization use clickbait and pop-up ads and the rise of online advertising driving this trend even further. But we are relevant, the topic is really relevant because we are at Panda session. We are coming up with a pandemic and actually we are already in pandemic and recession at the moment. And unfortunately, fake news in the COVID-19, the misinformation is spreading even faster than the virus itself, which is really dangerous. And unfortunately as well, social media firms fail to act on COVID-19 fake news. And this is where digital leadership is really important. This is why our consciousness into this issue is really important to tackle this. Just a quick quiz. Just look at this picture. Which face do you think is real? Have a look for a while. So if you answer on the left with the green box, then that face is actually real. But if you answer on the right, then that's even as simple as this doctored picture, is difficult to actually determine which one is fake and which one is real, isn't it? And the trend itself of future fake news, we have deep fake technology today. Some of you probably have seen this video of an actor impostering President Barack Obama. And you can see the technology itself has gone to this level of deep fake. And the detection technology is there. However, even with that deep fake detection, it's still hard to distinguish fake videos and fake content. And a third of the time, they get it wrong.
So what is the long-term effect of information? Polarization of the electorate? Or meter-spiritedness?
And false information as well, because the whole
All
fake news
pick
thing.
one, pick one. It's not just one. That's the flavor of the day. Every day is something else. People have to understand, are you using your device or is your device using you? Can you put it down? Can you turn it off?
You're talking about literally the places people get their information from.
I don't care what information. Pick one. Phone, television. You know, it used to be news. Now it's opinion. Oh, glasses. We have 3 experts on the right, 3 on the left. Let's discuss. Ooh, light bulbs. We have 3 experts on the right. That's not news. That's opinion. Well, over and over and over. Cycle, 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 cycle. What is the long-term effect of too much information? If you're sitting there and you're thinking it's the gospel, what I'm saying to people, to all of us, I'm not knocking the phone. What I'm saying is we have to understand, we have to at least ask ourselves around the world, you here in England, wherever you are, what is it doing to us?
So that's a thought-provoking question by Denzel Washington in a BBC interview. So the big question is, who do you trust today, right? Does any of you trust one of these leaders, who governs the biggest countries in the world? Or any of these leaders, do you trust any of them? Or perhaps you trust the young leaders of today who are doing a lot of good impact towards UN sustainable goals, for example. Do you trust any of them or know any of them? So when it comes to trust, Edelman Trust Barometer have done this research since a long time ago. And we look at the UK context. And they have done this 20 years of research on trust. And trust matters to a lot of key stakeholders, not less ourselves, but across the borders. But the trust inequality today has brought up a huge gap, especially in the digital world, where mass population is less trusting. And if you look at the countries today in the barometer, probably you can see some of your countries that the trust inequality is huge in terms of the gap. Informed public lose trust on business, NGOs, government, and media. It's hard to trust anything that you've read on the media even today, right? And in terms of trust to our own leaders, we don't have confidence that our current leaders will be able to successfully address the country's challenges. This is on the UK population, 73% is quite a high number. And the UK population trusts even more scientists and people in their own community. What about tech leaders? Do any of you trust some of these top 10 highest rated tech CEOs? 70% of employees agree it's critically important of CEOs to respond to challenging times in terms of industry issues, political events, and national crises. And when we look at trust on leaders, what about the other side of the spectrum? We trust our GIs even more, right? The technology that we're using, we trust them even more. The governnomics of this world, which Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon, for example. And from Vox Media, the survey that they've done recently in terms of these brands, you can see here the unfavorable brands have been social media channels like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And the share of people who trust these companies with their information, and you look again, Twitter and Facebook is on the downside, 43% and 41% trust these companies, as opposed to Microsoft and Amazon, for example. And let's another thought-provoking question. Would you be disappointed if these companies disappeared today? I'm sure some of us would, definitely. But when it comes to technology, again, we look at the trust barometer, the pace of change in technology is too fast. And people are worrying that whatever that they're seeing or hearing online is real. And they don't believe the government have the understanding to regulate this effectively. And quality of information is another area, because people are worrying that fake news is actually being used as a weapon, 73%, and it increased by +4 points, which is really disturbing. Now, how do we fight back?
Access to information is vital. When you create a haystack of human lives, a bucket that collects all of the records of all of your private activities.
Our current epidemic of misinformation, we're getting these news deserts. Local news is going extinct.
And we find this negative relationship between voter turnout and exposure to fake news.
The point of modern propaganda isn't only to misinform or push an agenda, it's to exhaust your critical thinking. And that's the way to violate truth.
When you believe that something's wrong, what do? You
get the future that you work for and you plan for. You get the future that you fight for.
The most important thing we can do is hopefully arm the consumer.
We need to keep studying these markets to really predict the implications for social welfare.
If we don't have privacy, we don't have the sanctity of our own.
So it starts with us. As leaders, we have to redefine ourselves in post-truth era and in the digital era. So the must-have competencies of an agile leader is humble, adaptable, visionary, and engaged. And this is a study done by this source. So how do you define an agile leader? Humble being, we have to accept others know more than us. We have to be very adaptable to change and have a vision, clear vision. Clarity leads to power with a detailed plan, and always be engaged. With that, we can instill ourselves with more informed decision making, fast execution, and have a better hyper awareness. And we also need to do fact checking. The good thing is fact checking has gone social, and we can do a lot more fact checking. And Twitter and Facebook, for example, have all these tools to use on these channels. And as mentioned just now, the platform has also fight back by having a lot of different measures to do more ad targeting and create more transparency. So the biggest key takeaway that I recommend for today is how do we spot fake news and how do we spot the credible sources of information. We need to consider the source. And these are 8 tips that we can use today. Check the date. Look at it, if it's, check your own bias and look at some supporting sources. And as a case study, I would like to show this as an example of a portal in Malaysia called sebenarnya.my, my home country, that has used a campaign that if you're not sure, do not share, or make sure that you check the source first. And this is a good sample of how government as well fight back. Another recommendation is this book called Savvy, where you can navigate fake companies, fake leaders, and fake news in the post-truth era, and it's being recommended by all these leaders and business tycoons. So you should have a look and really read this book. So I hope I've covered all this information in the short space of time that I have, and I hope it opens our eyes and our minds and redefine ourselves as a leader in this digital age. Let's continue to be engaged. If you go to www.idigital.my, you can have more information and download this deck. And for that, with that, I thank you for listening.